July 8, 1944. Northern Saipan breathes heat through broken cane and coral, the air salted by surf and the metallic tang of cordite. In a lava tube cut into the ridge, 16-year-old Nakamura Shigeru cups a Type 99 rifle whose stock smells of oil and mildew. 2 cartridges left. From the valley comes a scent not born of war, fat popping on hot steel, coffee boiling somewhere beyond the ridge. A voice follows, speaking patient Japanese, each word set like a stepping stone: food, water, medical care. The syllables make a bridge across a ravine his teachers said could not be crossed. He slides to the mouth and sees a single Marine below, helmet pushed back, an undershirt tied to a stick like a truce flag. PFC Guy Gabaldon stands within rifle range and does not flinch. Behind him, corpsmen arrange litters and water cans. Another Marine checks the latch on a squat insulated container that exhales steam when he cracks it. Nakamura tastes the steam before he tastes the food. He thinks of schoolyard drills, bamboo spears, speeches burned into him like summer, and of barley soup so thin a fly could drown without getting wet. The rifle is heavier than the boy who carries it. He adopts the posture they practiced in whispers, barrel up, fingers open, palms to the sky, and steps into the light. A sergeant with sunburned forearms takes the weapon and tags it, movements brisk but careful, like a man trained to handle both iron and fear. He hears the mechanical kiss of an M1 bolt run and eased, the flat metallic syllable of discipline. A corpsman checks a scrape on his knee and tells him, in simple Japanese, to breathe. "Chow after processing," the sergeant says, a word Nakamura does not know but understands with his nose. The line forming on the slope is not an army or a village. It is something new, a cue to mercy. Names are called, age is guessed, units hazarded. The book the lance corporal writes in has columns so straight they look like rails. The pencil moves with the confidence of a train that knows its destination. The cave breathes cool air on the back of his neck as if to pull him home. The smell ahead coaxes him forward, a rope thrown to a drowning man. He looks once over his shoulder into the black and sees only the echo of a lesson that no longer holds. Ahead there is steam, tin, and the soft chime of stacked trays. He steps when the line steps, discovering that surrender can sound like timing. The Marine with the flag gestures downhill, and the boy follows, hungry enough to trust a system he has never seen. The breeze rises, and the smell sharpens. Gabaldon waits where cane gives way to scabbed coral, undershirt flag hanging soft in the humid air. He keeps his hands visible and his tone conversational, the way he learned to speak with elders in Los Angeles kitchens. He does not bargain, he offers certainties: food, water, medical care. Behind him, a squad holds a loose perimeter, muzzles down, safeties on, eyes everywhere. The corpsman beside the water cans has a laugh ready, the best tool he owns after tourniquets. Civilians drift first, eyes lowered. Then the boys appear, thin shoulders under ill-fitted blouses, rifles slung like accusations. A lance corporal tags weapons and valuables, calling out each item with quartermaster precision. Another Marine records names in a log whose columns are so straight they might have been ruled with string. Doctrine has a choreography, and these young Americans move as if the music were inside their bones. A sharp report breaks from a cave mouth to the north. The squad's M1 Garans rise as one, 8-round clips seated with metallic finality, then ease down when nothing follows. The discipline eases faces more than any smile could have done. A sergeant guides Nakamura to shade. A corpsman checks his pulse, dries a scrape with gauze, and tells him, in careful Japanese, to breathe. Behind the collection point, a field table groans under steel trays. The smell of coffee deepens, carried up the defile by a sea breeze that works like a messenger. A private heaves an insulated mermite container onto a plank and twists its latch. Steam rolls out and vanishes into salt air. Someone says "chow line," and the words have the cadence of a chapel bell. Gabaldon keeps talking. safe conduct, rules, the camp where the teenagers will go. He is not selling kindness, he is predicting a system. He explains that prisoners will be searched and tagged, their wounds treated, their names spelled as accurately as ears allow. He does not mention the legal code by number, only that men on both sides answer to it. The phrase he repeats, same chow as base troops, sounds to him like a lever that moves more than a single day's hunger. A confiscated Type 99 sits safe on a tarp, while a corporal demonstrates the bolt to a private fresh from stateside. Respect for a dangerous piece of steel looks like respect for the boy who carried it. The line inches forward. A mess corporal counts ladles per tray in his head to keep portions even. A guard watches the horizon without staring at faces. When the first cup of hot liquid changes hands, the ridge exhales. Down in the valley, a truck backfires like a faraway argument. Up here, in orderly silence, the promise keeps time. The path angles into a clearing marked by a chalked arrow on a coconut log, collection point, and the new world begins with a ledger. Names sound out, ages guessed, units hazarded, a stack of tags growing like fallen leaves beside a corporal's elbow. Nakamura surrenders spare rounds and watches them counted into a tin. The corporal clicks his tongue at the dented brass and notes the lot with a neat stroke. A mess corporal lifts the latch on a Mermite can and ladles stew for civilians first, then boys who have not called themselves boys in months. Routine has the intimacy of habit. C-ration tins bulge in canvas sacks. K-ration cartons show neat typography. Their calorie counts a fantasy to anyone raised on scarcity. A lieutenant checks off triage codes and transportation priorities. The words Geneva Convention pass from mouth to mouth like the name of a ship just swung into harbour. Meaning arrives in fragments. Prisoners eat like base troops. Medical care is guaranteed, work may be paid, and the camp schedule is a clock that rarely lies. Trucks growl up and the boys climb into the beds as if joining a team they do not yet understand. The convoy bumps south, island wounds on either side toward cages, mess, and procedures that will make new lives measurable. At a halt, a Marine passes a canteen. Another secures helmets. Safety for the once enemy treated as a line item, not a favour. The edge of terror rounds off into watchfulness. It would have seemed impossible that a nation at war could feed its enemies well, but the smell at the collection point is only a footnote to a larger sentence. Far away on the mainland, at Willow Run, an American factory has turned out B-24 Liberator bombers at a pace that beggars belief, roughly one aircraft every hour at peak, heavy machines leaving an assembly line as if time were raw material. The country that can marry law to throughput like that can plate stew for prisoners without blinking. The trucks crest a low ridge, and the ocean opens like a roof rolling back. Nakamura presses his palm to the wooden slat and feels the vibration of an engine that will not quit. He has known ferocity and improvisation, not reliability. The convoy angles toward a fenced compound, tidy as a diagram. Somewhere beyond the horizon, ships will hand to rails, rails to kitchens, kitchens to trays. He cannot name the doctrine. He trusts its rhythm. When the truck brakes, the smell changes. Less smoke, more onion, a sweetness like bakery. The guard at the gate checks a clipboard and waves them through. A signboard announces evening chow at 1700 in neat block letters, like a clock that keeps perfect time. Nakamura climbs down, knees stiff, studies a line at the mess door that includes both privates and prisoners, and steps toward it, following the drift of steam. Honolulu Valley wears its red earth like a uniform. Morning haze clings to wire and tower, the geometry of custody against sugarcane and volcanic slope. Tanaka Kenji, technical 5th grade, military intelligence service, reads a transport manifest under a tar paper awning and translates the day into tasks, head count, medical, assignments, mess. The bell at 0600 marks time the way tide marks a reef. Schedules are not kindness here, they are command. He meets the Saipan boys at intake, voice light from hunger and habit. He explains the rules in patient Japanese. Work details are voluntary and paid in camp currency, canteen purchases are logged, and meals run to schedule whether the sky holds rain or heat. He adds the line that changes faces. The rations match what base troops receive because the Geneva Convention requires parity. Suspicion meets the words, then is eroded by the predictable noises of trays and ladles and the gravity of coffee. The mess hall surprises because it looks ordinary. Long tables, benches polished by 1,000 sit-downs a day, steel trays stacked like small shields. Rice some nights, beef and white bread on others, vegetables cut into uniform squares that speak not of bounty, but of a system that hates exceptions. A boy holds a slice of bread the way one might hold a letter from home. Tanaka does not intrude. He simply notes that the line moves at the same speed today as yesterday and will tomorrow if ships keep their time. In the afternoon, he sits for interviews. The best intelligence often arrives after lunch, when fear has softened and pride has found a quiet place to sit. A name for a company commander, a sketch of a cave network, a rumour about ammunition shortages, small stones that help pave a road for someone else's patrol. He files the reports, signs a stack with neat block letters, and listens to the kitchen clatter beginning again for the evening meal. He points out small mercies embedded in routine, boots issued to replace straw sandals, posted latrine schedules to prevent humiliation, and medical lines twice daily to catch infection before it catches them. Camp currency buys stationery and, on lucky days, bottled soda from morale stocks. He does not promise miracles. He promises rules. The boys, trained to read the weather of adult faces, see that he believes his own translation, and belief is a rare ration. At 1700 the bell rings and time becomes smell. Beef sizzles on flat tops while rice boils in regimented calm. A clerk with a stopwatch times the line from door to tray to seat. Throughput is not an abstraction here but a tempo with heat behind it. A kitchen corporal calls for more onions and a runner returns with a crate before the sentence ends. Nothing dramatic happens, which is the most dramatic thing to those who lived in caves lit by grenades. Night gathers. The bell for lights out sounds like a promise. Wisconsin dawn makes a glassy rime on rail sidings at Camp McCoy. Staff Sergeant. Earl Red Halverson checks his watch against the wall clock and then against the tempo living in his bones. He briefs his cooks in a voice that carries through steam. Portion counts, sanitation, timing to the minute. Train cars of flour, beef and coffee have become stacked inventory. He assigns a grill crew, spatulas like bayonets, aprons already salted with last week's grease. He loves the sound a clean hot plate makes when meat first meets steel. Inventory sheets read like a prayer. 50-pound sacks pyramid to the rafters. Beef by the quarter rests in cold storage built to outlast weather and whim. Coffee arrives in drums tall as a private. It disappears into urns that can pour a platoon per minute. Halverson moves among stations, setting pace and tone. The young cooks learn that a mess line is a formation, trays like helmets, ladles like rifles, and that dignity can be served as surely as protein. The POW detail from Hawaii arrives late morning, thin from travel but upright. Registration, medical, delousing, assignment, each station an answer to a fear. A guard stands easy at the door, the set of his shoulders saying order, not menace. On the board, today's menu is chalked in a sure hand. Halverson has added onions to the ground beef. The smell will carry farther in cool air, and the line will move faster because curiosity will do part of the work. By noon, the trays slide in rhythm. The grill crew works with the grace of a drill team. Flip, rest, plate, repeat, while a private tops off coffee with the attention a man might give to loading a rifle. He tracks plate waste on a clipboard and smiles at the small number. Efficiency here is not a scold, it is a compliment to appetite and trust. Outside, frost bites his teeth and the smell of hamburger follows him into the light. He checks his watch. right on time, which is how victory tastes when it is still being cooked. He thinks in rates. A company can eat in 7 minutes, a battalion needs 25. The grill yields 30 patties per minute if flip timing stays near 10 seconds aside. Onions stretch flavour like doctrine. He seasons for morale, knowing salt and warmth are the first diplomats in any room. When the POWs file in, he watches their eyes more than their hands. Hunger looks different from malice. He has learned the difference. Inside, the line is a promise kept. Today he will feed thousands without missing schedule or portion. He knows how many pounds of beef rest in reserve, how many trays can be washed and dried before the evening cycle, and how far the smell will drift if the vents are half open. He believes a republic's power can be measured in full plates delivered on time. The noon bell fades under the chatter of forks, and the second pan hisses on cue. The line shuffles forward at midday, boots scuffing old boards, trays ringing soft as wind chimes. Nakamura reaches the window and pauses, not from fear, but from the need to understand. The messman drops a patty on his tray, sets a slice of white bread beside it, and jerks his chin to the coffee urn. Heat rises in waves that smell of salt and animal fat, and something like forgiveness. He carries the tray to a bench and sits as if taking a test he never studied for. Tanaka appears at his shoulder with the same calm that translated the rules on Oahu. He repeats that POW rations match base troop rations because law demands it and logistics allow it. He points to the posted schedule. Breakfast, dinner, supper, no exceptions. Nakamura listens with his hands. The bread yields. The crust gives a small sigh. The first bite is heat and salt, the second is structure. He is tasting a system as much as food. Across the room, Halverson walks the line with a clipboard, marking waste percentages that sit near 0, confirming the rightness of his timing and seasoning. He checks coffee drums, full, watches a corporal refill condiments, full, and nods to the guard who has not raised his voice all day. The mess hall is a machine. He is its engineer. He knows how many men can be fed per minute, how many pounds of beef rest in reserve, how many trays can be washed and dried before the evening cycle. Voices settle into a hum. Forks click. The smell clings to wool and follows men into memory. It would have sounded like bragging to say a nation could build an ocean-going cargo ship in days, but the line here is fed by that miracle. On the coast, shipyards have launched Liberty ships in records measured not in months, but in hours. One slid down the ways in 4 days, steel welded into urgency. Those hulls bring beef and flour and coffee to rails, and rails bring them here. He does not eat quickly. War taught him to bolt food, but the regularity here asks for attention. He studies the bread's grain, the uniform grind of the patty, and the way coffee cuts fat so the next bite tastes like the first. Around him, men speak in low voices, laughter like a knuckle rapping wood. The guard looks bored. Nakamura reads safety more eloquent than any speech. He swallows and feels strength return to his hands like permission. By the time trays clatter into wash racks, the second shift forms like a tide. Halverson signs his totals. Tanaka closes a file. Nakamura wipes his mouth with the back of his hand as a napkin arrives a moment too late. Outside, Wisconsin breathes frost into a thin sun, and the chimney throws a banner of smell toward the rail line that will bring more. The boy who carried a Type 99 no longer needs it. He rises, full for the first time in years, and the world tilts toward possible. The rumour moves faster than any leaflet. It travels on steam and laughter, on the metallic chime of trays and the soft authority of posted schedules. By the time Tanaka finishes his morning interviews, 2 boys from a different compound have already asked whether the dinner bell here rings on time the way it does in the next yard. It does. He has learned that predictability is its own language. He pours coffee, waits out pride, and listens as details surface like coral heads in a falling tide. Nicknames for platoon leaders, the supply cave that smells of wet rope, the trail that skirts a ravine where patrols keep losing a man to a single rifle shot at dusk. After chow, the S2 captain leans over the map with Tanaka's notes pinned in tidy squares. A captured corporal's memory of an ammunition dump aligns with a rumour Tanaka logged last week from a civilian. A patrol route shifts 100 yards and avoids the blind corner. A small change no one will write songs about saves a private's life 3 days from now. In the mess hall, Halverson adjusts the grill's vent dampers a quarter turn and knocks 2 minutes off the lunch cycle. The boys eat hotter food. The guard changes shifts without raising his voice. The day proceeds like an assembly line, each station shaving a fraction off fear. Word radiates outward. On patrol, Marines hear it from interpreters dragged into parley from cave mouths. Prisoners are fed like Americans, counted at dawn and dusk, not beaten for boredom's sake. At first, the rumour is dismissed as trickery, then weighed against stories from cousins who vanished into American custody and returned months later with weight on their faces and a letter in their pockets. Bushido meets punctuality and discovers it is not drama that breaks men. It is routine. A priest tells his flock to wait for night and walk downhill. They do. Nakamura learns to sweep a corridor and stack trays on edge so they dry faster. He is paid in camp scrip and spends a little on paper and ink. The first letter home is stiff with apology and relief. He writes that a bell rings each day at 1700 and that he has not missed it once. He does not mention the hamburger because he cannot yet translate smell, only certainty. He writes that the men with rifles treat him as a problem already solved. One afternoon, a new truckload arrives thin and jumpy. The first boy through the gate watches a guard hand a cup to a man too tired to lift it and stops, confused by the lack of performance. The line moves. The cup is full. He takes it and drinks as if permission were a liquid. Mercy, multiplied by process, becomes a tactic without banners. When the bell rings, conversation swells. The rumour leaves with the steam and finds the next hillside waiting to be convinced. The camera in the mind pulls back and the mess line becomes a conveyor belt that feeds an army while a different belt feeds the sky. On a winter morning in Kansas, a B-29 Superfortress rolls toward the runway, 4 engines purring like factories that have learned to fly. The airplane is an industrial poem in aluminum and rivets, its bomb bay a promise made in cubic feet. At peak, American plants will put nearly 4,000 of these heavy bombers into the air, each one proof that distance is a solvable problem if you have the parts. Shift coasts and the frame drops to surf line, where amphibious tractors, LVTS, with their blunt snouts and treads like chewing jaws, climb beaches that once defeated navies. 18,000 plus of these machines will exist by war's end, their number less an inventory than a verb. They lift men, guns, fuel, medical tents, and, as a side effect of abundance, onions for Halverson's griddle. The same depot that routes 105mm shells by the trainload also ships coffee in drums tall as a private. In a republic's hands, logistics does not choose between lethality and mercy. It budgets both. Inside a Midwestern warehouse, fork trucks hum past pyramids of 50-pound flour sacks. Cold storage breathes the breath of winter in July. Rail sidings ring to couplers that slam like punctuation marks. Timetables stack in a dispatcher's rack, columns of time that can be converted into calories or sorties by anyone holding the right slide rule. Quartermaster tables reduce dread to arithmetic. So many mouths, so many tons, so many hours from port to plate. The numbers are not cold, they are the warmth of coffee poured on time. Halverson walks the meat locker and calculates yield. He knows exactly how many patties a side of beef will surrender and how far onions can stretch flavour without cheating anyone. A decent mess is force protection. He says it like creed. Tanaka, leafing through interrogation reports, recognizes the same creed written in another dialect. A fed prisoner remembers better, speaks longer, and misdirects less. The captain circling airfields on a wall map thinks in radii. The sergeant at the beachhead thinks in tide tables and winch loads. Each man tends his numbers, and together the numbers begin to look like a continent in motion. A patrol swings wide of a ravine thanks to yesterday's rumour set to paper, and the squad returns at strength. Somewhere in the Marianas, a maintenance chief signs off on a bomber whose engines drink fuel that arrived down the same rail where Halverson's onions rode. The bomber climbs into a sky that once belonged to myth and now belongs to production. Back in Wisconsin, the grill sighs under a fresh pan of meat. The smell drifts beyond the fence and finds a boy whose memory knows scarcity. His stomach moves before his feet do. He joins the line. Rain needles the Okinawa ridgelines like a tailor closing a wound that refuses to heal. Mud sucks at boots. The air smells of cordite and wet limestone. A leaflet sticks to a stone and bleeds ink, but the message it carries no longer needs paper. It rides on recollection from Saipan and whispers from compounds. The Americans feed you, count you, keep their word about time. A teenage auxiliary who learned to clean a Type 99 with spit and cloth remembers a cousin's letter about rice on Tuesdays and beef on Fridays, about a bell that does not lie. Under a poncho he counts the cartridges that remain and finds the number is not equal to hope. The platoon leader reads the ground with a hunter's patience and notes something new. Fewer sudden charges, more white cloth held high at distance, more boys willing to sit rather than explode. He does not relax. He shifts fire lanes and calls for interpreters trained by men like Tanaka. The first question is always the same. Are the rumours true? The second question, almost always a whisper, is whether there will be bread. There will be. The Marines keep moving, mud to the calf, and the radio clicks methodically through call signs that belong to technique more than theatre. Not every fight shortens. Some grow teeth in caves that have learned to echo grenades back at their throwers. But the aggregate begins to change. Intelligence improves because fear declines. The map on the battalion wall shows a patrol route bending around an ambush site identified by a Fed prisoner whose relief came plated. Casualty reports still arrive, folded and terrible, but fewer list men lost to the same predictable corners. It is the kind of victory only statisticians cheer, and yet every private reads it as breath he gets to keep. The camera pulls higher. In 1944 alone, American factories produced roughly 96,000 military aircraft, nearly 100,000 wings in a single year, while Japan strained under blockade and shortage to match even fractions of that pace. The statistic seems impossible because it measures not machines but will, one free nation producing in a single year a fleet the size of empires. The same assembly lines that birthed the bombers also birthed the refrigerated trucks that rolled meat to docks, the rail cars that pulled coffee across mountains, the flat-top griddles that turned fat to aroma. Abundance does not apologize. It broadcasts. A rain squall crosses the ridge and passes. The teenage auxiliary lowers his rifle, a white cloth in the other hand, and waits for the shot that doctrine promised. It does not come. A Marine waves him forward, patient as a metronome. In the compound tomorrow, a bell will ring and food will arrive, and a man who once recited slogans will learn the grammar of schedules. Tonight, under a tarpaulin, a staff sergeant updates the map with a pencil that does not tremble. The line he draws is a little shorter than yesterday's, and no one makes a speech. The chalkboard stands like a window into the war's secret engine. A quartermaster captain writes with the authority of a man who believes in arithmetic more than adjectives. Head count. Battalion strength and POW compound totals. Calories. 2,800 minimum for field. 3,000 plus when weather or labour demand it. Throughput. Train arrivals per week. Convoy reliability percentages that would impress a banker. He steps back, chalk dust on his sleeve, and sees a story no correspondent would print on its face. Victory written in columns. Halverson sends up his numbers. Plate waste under 3%, line time shaved by seconds that stack into minutes, onions extending palatability without eroding dignity. He lists reserves: how many pounds of beef, how much flour, coffee to the drum. He knows that coffee poured predictably makes men talk more and fight better. He does not say it like poetry, he says it like a docket item. The captain adds the figures to a ledger that folds field kitchens into the same sentence as fuel dumps and ammunition point resupply. The ledger is not sentimental, it is loyal. Tanaka brings a sheaf of interrogation summaries clipped with discipline. The summaries mention cave networks and munition caches, but they also mention confidence in treatment. The captain underlines the correlation he has suspected for months. Lawful, predictable provision lowers resistance in measurable ways. Guard incident rates trend down when meals are hot and on time. Sick call drops when men can count on protein. He circles the Geneva parity line as if circling a ridge on a map. The doctrine turns out to be a hill worth holding. The board accumulates other facts that look domestic and turn out to be strategic. Soap deliveries to compounds keep disease from blooming, and so guards are not diverted to quarantine duty. New boots for prisoners prevent work detail injuries, keeping labour efficient and resentment in check. Even the laundry schedule fights the enemy by preventing tired, hungry irritation from curdling into violence. The captain has learned to love small numbers because each hides a saved life. He steps outside the office and squints at a sky crisscrossed by contrails. Far away, bombers climb, their bomb bays carrying arguments no general could make with a speech. Nearer, a flatbed truck rattles past with sacks of flour slung like friendly artillery. Inside the mess, trays stack and the tap of utensils forms a music looped to the hours. None of it looks heroic, and yet men at the front will sleep tonight because of it. The captain lifts his chalk again. Where others see supplies, he sees tempo. Where others see food, he sees trust sold by the ladle and recorded by the hour. The board takes another line of numbers that will never be carved in stone, and should be. The worn copy of the Geneva Convention sits on the desk like a manual that has passed through many hands, its spine cracked from use rather than parade. A guard sergeant reads the relevant article aloud to a squad of replacements. Rations of prisoners must equal those of depot troops, and the young faces nod, puzzled that law could be this direct. The sergeant explains how to search with respect, how to speak without swagger, and how to enforce rules with boredom rather than rage. He understands that boredom is safer. In the compound, Tanaka mediates a dispute over work rosters with the patience of a clerk and the authority of a translator who can make rule feel like shelter. He has learned that consistency is the only charisma that matters. He signs off on a schedule that will put the right men at the bakery detail and the right men in the garden rows. The produce will be weighed, recorded, and boiled into the week's menus. Nothing about the process is dramatic until you measure its outcomes. Interrogation yield improves after hot meals. Incident reports fall in places where coffee is hot at first pour. The ledger measures decency as effectiveness. Outside the wire, a columnist from the nearest town sniffs that prisoners are coddled while ration books litter American kitchen drawers. The post commander answers with receipts, not rhetoric, portion counts, inspection notes, audit trails that run clean. He explains that discipline lives in predictability and that predictable treatment produces predictable prisoners, which is safer for everyone wearing a uniform. He also notes that the same kitchens feed guard companies, and their steadiness has made the post a place where a private can learn patience that will translate to patrols. A chaplain visits and watches the line move at 1700 as if pulled by a motor. He sees a guard offer a fork to a prisoner who dropped his, and no one makes a show of it. He blesses it without words. Halverson, reviewing his week, writes that grill maintenance prevents delays, and that delays create irritation, and irritation spills. He is not a philosopher, he is a cook who knows how tempers simmer. He trains a private to flip patties with wrist rather than elbow, saving motion that will be needed at supper, saving mood that will be needed at midnight. Doctrine turns into muscle memory. The guard does not need to think about fairness. He has a checklist. The interpreter does not need to invent compassion. He has a schedule. The mess sergeant does not need to decide whether to feed prisoners well. The law has decided, and the rail has delivered. The miracle is that nothing miraculous happens. At taps, men lie down. At réveillé, they stand up. Between those poles, a nation proves that mercy executed at scale is not softness, but system. Tokyo evening carries a thin smoke that finds its way through alleys and up Nakamura's sleeve like a message from another life. A street vendor flips patties on a grill so small it could pass for a toy, and the hiss, the onion, the friendly fatigue of cooked fat. Everything arrives at once. He stops mid-stride and feels Wisconsin frost on his gums, hears a bell ring 1,700 miles from any ocean he knew as a boy, and tastes the certainty that once lined up in trays like steel address labels. He buys a sandwich and thanks the vendor with a bow that feels both old and new. On his counter at home lies a letter from Tanaka, now a teacher, his handwriting still so neat it looks typeset. The lines are practical. He teaches young men to keep their promises on time, and writes that law deserves a place in the pantry as surely as rice. He mentions a memorial service where an empty chair was set for those who did not return, and says that the bell in his head still rings at 1700, whether or not there is food to accompany it. He hopes Nakamura eats well. The paper smells faintly of ink and a life kept tidy. Nakamura reads and, as always, measures his street's noises against a ledger of memory. He remembers Halverson counting waste percentages like a man counting sins he is glad not to have, remembers trays wiped dry and stacked to a height that spoke of tomorrow as a foregone conclusion. He remembers, too, the statistics Tanaka once outlined with care. Bombers built in their thousands, amphibians counted in the tens of thousands, and Liberty ships launched in steel avalanches, 2,710 ocean-going hulls in all, so numerous that the map itself seemed to bow under their weight. Impossible numbers once felt like rumours, they became facts he could stand on. Years later, he thinks that what defeated him was not a weapon, but a habit. A republic deciding that if it could feed its soldiers, it could feed its prisoners, and then proving it every day until rumour turned to routine and routine to faith. He knows boys still die in mud because memory cannot always outrun fear, but he also knows that fear's favourite diet is surprise, and schedule starved it. He writes Tanaka back in a hand less tidy than the teacher's and encloses a photograph of his shop, its shelves lined evenly, its bell positioned above the door exactly where a customer will hear it and know someone is coming. He eats the last bite slowly. The vendor wipes the grill with a practiced wrist, and the smell lifts like a soft banner above the alley mouth. The arithmetic of that smell writes itself in his chest. B-29s in their thousands, LVTS by the tens of thousands, Liberty ships by the thousands more. Numbers that once seemed like weather now understood as choices. He pays, pockets the change, and steps into a night made orderly by lights turning green on schedule. Behind him the griddle sings on cue, and for a moment he is both prisoner and citizen, both hungry boy and satisfied man, both witness and proof.